On this Friday's episode of the Lockon Texans podcast, latest on the injuries and defining moment for Bobby Slowik, question mark. Go ahead and I get into all of that on Friday's show.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily Houston Texans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, Locked On Texans fans, listeners, and viewers out there to this Friday's episode of the Locked On Texans podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Johnson Sports Guy Hickman, of course, joining me as always is Sports Illustrated's own credential media member, Cody Davis. If this is your first time listening or watching the Locked On Texans podcast, be sure to subscribe, like, and comment on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And thank you for all of our returning listeners for returning back as we continue to talk Texans here on the Locked On Texans podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. Cody, we got to look at a couple of things today. How can Houston contain Will Levis, rookie quarterback from the 2023 NFL draft, who has been very impressive over his last couple of games, and Derrick Henry, who has been known to run for wild 200 yards on the Houston Texans. That won't be the case this year. Is this a defining moment for Bobby Slowik? Very interesting topic, but we opened up today's show looking at the latest on the injuries for the Houston Texans.
And the injury report is not good because CJ Stroud, as expected, is still in concussion protocol. Later on today, I do not expect him to be in practice, so you guys know what that means for the very first time. And hopefully we are not saying this too much throughout his career, but CJ Stroud will not be active for the Houston Texans Week 15 contest against the Tennessee Titans. But even though CJ Stroud is the most important player, he's not going to be the only player, because on Thursday, Will Anderson Jr., Blake Cashman, Nico Collins, George Fant, and Tavierre Thomas were all non-participants at practice. And out of all of those names that I just named, I do expect George Fant to play because he went a similar route last week. As you guys know, he's battling through a hip injury, but it has not sidelined him as of right now. But, John, to know that this is a team that's going to be without CJ Stroud, that's going to be without Will Anderson Jr., Blake Cashman, Nico Collins, Tavierre Thomas, and look, I understand nothing has been confirmed. However, you guys already know the drill. If they have missed Wednesday and Thursday's practice, the chances of them suiting up that Sunday is slim to none. However, through all of these injuries, I do want to mention that Dalton Schultz has participated in practice not once, but twice. That is going to be real good for the Houston Texans because, as you guys know, last week he did participate in Wednesday practice, but he did not play. He did not practice Thursday or Friday. But, this is going to be a team that, even though we still believe that they have a slim chance to still make the playoffs, it's going to be very hard for them to go in Tennessee and get a victory. And look, once again, it goes beyond CJ Stroud. I actually have some faith in Davis Mills. We'll get into that in the next segment. But to know that this is a team that has made tremendous strides at stopping the run, to know that two of those guys on the defensive side of the ball, Cashman, Anderson, are not going to be there, it scares me a little bit. To know that you're not going to have arguably your best wide receiver and Nico Collins, that scares me a little bit, John.
Will Anderson was in a boot, walking in the boot Thursday. So with a high ankle sprain, MetLife Stadium, count your days. But I do think that when I look at the Houston Texans right now going into this game with the amount of injuries, Blake Cashman, Will Anderson, again, Cody, as you mentioned, how they've impacted the run for Houston. I think like I said on the crossover show, I think this is going to be a close game with or without
Mm-hmm.
those guys. I think, losing Blake Cashman again, especially Will Anderson, um, losing those players when you're going up against a banged up offensive line or offensive line that hasn't been productive or good for the entire year in the Tennessee Titans, that could allow them to get some steam. And so I'm looking at John Gennard, a guy that double-digit sack guy who has been very good for the Houston Texans this year on the edge. I'm looking at him. I'm looking at Malik Collins to step up. And I'm looking at the combination of Perriman and Christian Harris to rebound from their games that they had last week against the New York Jets. I thought the entire linebacker core struggled against the New York Jets. So I would love to see those two guys rebound without Blake Cashman. And also I think that with the amount of injuries that the Houston Texans have sustained this week alone, my man, I was talking to Coach Barnes. You guys know him as Coach Barnes on Twitter. But we had a conversation, and he told me it's crazy how hope can turn to worry, how fast hope can turn into worry. And that's what's going on with the Houston Texans right now. A lot of the happiness that we can make the playoffs, that has now turned into question marks for the OC, which we'll get into, question marks on whether or not they can win games that, should be gimmies. Now with the injuries, a lot of question marks now, and the injuries piling up just makes it worse. So Houston will have a tough game this Sunday against the division mate Tennessee Titans. Hey guys, when you're hiring for your small business, you want to make sure that you have as many top-tier candidates as possible to interview. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right professional. They have the tools that you need to find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. It isn't just another job board. That's not what LinkedIn is. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to this Friday installment of Locked On Texans. John, listeners and viewers, I truly do believe that Sunday is going to be a defining moment for offensive coordinator Bobby Slowik, because throughout this whole entire season, there have been moments where we have criticized Bobby Slowik, but there's also been a lot of moments where we've praised him ever since he got hired. Even before he got hired, we started hearing rumblings that Coach D'Amico Ryans was going to bring Bobby Slowik over from San Francisco. And the one thing that I'm looking at in terms of Bobby Slowik, you guys that's been rocking with the show all season, first and foremost, thank you for your support. But you guys heard me say this, that he has played a significant role in the quick development that we have seen from CJ Stroud throughout this whole entire season. And another thing that I have loved, and it's probably my favorite attribute in terms of looking at Bobby as the offensive coordinator, is how he has been able to utilize the players that he have, and how the way he's been working with his players to make sure that he put them in the best position. However, John, going into Sunday's game, this is going to be the very first time that we see Bobby Slowik without CJ Stroud. This is going to be the first time that we see Bobby Slowik without the combination of Tank Dell and Nico Collins. And on Thursday, I had an opportunity to ask Bobby Slowik, if you go into Sunday's game and you do not have CJ, and right now the Texans, they claim that they're weighing their option between Davis Mills and Case Keenum, how much does that impact your abilities as a play caller?
Yeah, 1,000%. You always want to call a game to your player strengths, and it starts with the quarterback. What do guys do well? I think we all can agree CJ throws the ball probably better than most people and humans we've ever seen. He threads needles all the time. That's a special trait he has. Davis has some other traits. I already mentioned some stuff he does on the move that I think it's really impressive. Case can own. He's been around a long time. He can own operation. He can own play calls. So, you always are going to make adjustments to whoever's out there. It's the same at any other really skilled position up front. We had different game plans when we had some different tackles in. We're always going to make sure that we're putting guys in positions to let them succeed.
I think we need to stop saying under center for quarterbacks now. I can see behind center, but under center, how many quarterbacks are actually? How many quarterbacks are actually more times than not under center? A lot of times they're shotgun. This is just a random thought of mine.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why I did that, but I do want to follow up by saying I think we need to give Gerard Johnson some more credit for what we've seen out of this offense and what we've seen from quarterback play. And with that being said, I think Sunday's matchup for Bobby Slowik is going to come down to this. Was C.J. Stroud bailing you out? Mm-hmm. Did the Houston Texans make that good of a pick at the number 2 overall pick this past NFL draft with their quarterback that he's bailing you out? I don't think the Pittsburgh Steelers game let's see, it was another game. There's been 2 games this year out of the 7 wins where I thought to myself, man, they really did get some help from the sideline from play calling. Pittsburgh is definitely one of them.
Did I say Tampa?
Was it Tampa?
Oh, you might be talking about game 2, the second half that they played against Indianapolis when it seemed like that they was pushing the comeback.
I'm looking at the full game. I know for sure Pittsburgh, and that one will always stand out to me because of how they, like you just mentioned, the tackles and how they, neutralize that front 4 from the Pittsburgh Steelers. I thought that was phenomenal. Mm-hmm. I know there's another game, but I can't remember off the top of my head. But for Bobby Slowik, you know what? Screw what's going on next year. Next year isn't happening. Right now, what's happening is your team got a shot for the playoffs. And the common denominator for the 7 wins that this team has garnered, C.J. Stroud. Right? And so now that there's no C.J. Stroud, on top of no Nico possibly, on top of course, no Tank Dell, how will they get the best out of Davis Mills? Or Case Keenum? But I think that's the question right now for Bobby Slowik, who a lot of people just want to hand him a head coaching gig next year. Mm-hmm. I think that needs to slow down. I think the New York Jets game was the biggest slow down game. Like, okay, look what just happened against the New York Jets. That's the biggest slowdown. But I definitely want to see how can he help out a quarterback that isn't the best in Davis Mills. And Davis Mills says something about him being in the league for 3 years and he's gotten better, and that may be the case for Davis. And I think Davis could potentially have a good game for Houston. Again, this is a division game. It's going to be tough. Davis has beat the Tennessee Titans in the past, so he has some success going up against that team. But I don't want to see a vanilla offense. I don't want to see a handcuffed offense. I don't want to see an offense where I leave the game, and once again, I'm thinking to myself, where was the support for this offense from the sideline? And I get it. You won't have your top dogs out there.
That's what I was about to get at.
You won't have them. But if Houston loses and they just, go out and they lose a good game, I can say to myself, all right, well, any given Sunday. Mm-hmm. But if Houston goes out there, and granted again, the top dogs are not going to be playing. But if Houston goes out there and we don't see an attempt to get guys involved, get guys that hasn't been playmakers traditionally for the year involved, then it goes right back to that sideline. I'm thinking to myself, Bobby, was it you and your presence on this coaching staff that has allowed this team in 1 year to go from the bottom ranked offense in the NFL to the top 10? Or, did the McNairs, did Nick Caserio, did they get the number 2 overall pick right with C.J. Stroud? And I think that's going to be a possibility that after that game, I may say to myself, it was definitely C.J. Stroud. But I'm holding out hope because I like Bobby and I want to see what Bobby can do. I want to give him a fair shot.
And that's why I say it's going to be a career-defining moment, John. Really quick, here are the improvements that the Houston Texans have made in 2023 so far. They have scored an average of 22 points per game while recording an average of 378 total yards. 250 has come in passing. That is with CJ Stroud, Tank Dell, Nico Collins, and a pretty good and healthy offensive line. Bobby Slowik doesn't have none of those factors working for him on Sunday. However, in 2022, this is a team that averaged 17 points while averaging 301 yards, 196 through the air. The only common denominator between the 2023 and 2022 teams, well, actually, there's two: Davis Mills and Dameon Pierce. And we know without a shadow of a doubt, neither one of those guys has contributed to the success that we have seen out of the Houston Texans so far this year. But what I would say, man, if Bobby Slowik in Tennessee, with everything working against him, can go out there and call a very good game, I'm not even going to go as far as to say they have to win. The performance that you showcased in New York against the Jets cannot replicate in Tennessee.
It's the holiday season, and around this time of year, everybody may be happy, but sometimes it can bring on seasonal depression. It's okay, it happens, but I think the best thing about knowing the possibilities of seasonal depression is also knowing of different ways to combat it and to beat it, right? And I think BetterHelp is one of those opportunities and options that's out there for us to kind of fight back against things like seasonal depression. The holidays are a great time, right? Whether or not you have your family giving you gifts during the holidays, you get to define how you give to yourself, whether it's by starting therapy, going easier on yourself during the tough moments, or just by treating yourself to a day of complete rest, which I know I need if you can hear it in my voice. But remember to give yourself some love this holiday season. And I think, again, guys, BetterHelp is a great option to do that. I benefited from therapy. I'm always going to be an advocate of therapy, and I definitely want more and more people to just look at that option of giving themselves the opportunity to defeat whatever they may be going on. So it's entirely online. You guys know this. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suitable to your schedule. All you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. In the season of giving, give to yourself what you need with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon today.
Welcome back in, ladies and gentlemen, to this Friday installment of Locked On Texans. Later on today, when we have an opportunity to hear from D'Amico Ryans, hopefully he will give us a starter for Sunday's game. Look, I'm not buying the whole they are debating between Case Keenum and Davis Mills. It's definitely going to be Davis Mills. As you guys saw, Case Keenum has been inactive throughout this whole entire season. Davis Mills, whenever his number was called, he was the one he was the one on the field taking snaps. However, John, what do you think is more important for this Texans defense? Containing Will Levis or Derrick Henry? Now, before you answer, I understand that question might throw a lot of people off, but when you look at the loss against the Atlanta Falcons,
the New York Jets, the Carolina Panthers,
the New York Jets, Lord have mercy. They
went crazy. Derek Carr went crazy on this defense. Yes, containing Will Levis. That's not even a question for me. It's not even
over Derrick Henry, a guy who has rushed for over 200 yards.
Be who the Texans should be contained. Let me tell you why. You can live with Derrick Henry beating you.
Mm-hmm.
For D'Amico Ryan, who has been, heralded as the defensive guy,
mm-hmm.
you cannot afford for Will Levis to come in here and go crazy on this defense. Just like you couldn't afford for Zach Wilson to do that, but that happened.
To the point he won AFC Offensive Player of the Week.
And I don't even think that's crazy because I don't even think Zach Wilson had the best game for AFC Player last week.
No, he didn't.
But I digress, but it's definitely containing Will Levis. Because I'm going to tell you why. Because right now, even without Will Anderson, I think this team could do a good job of stopping Derrick Henry. That offensive line is that bad.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't been winning games because Derrick Henry has been great.
Mm-hmm.
They've been winning some of these games because Will Levis has been giving their team a chance.
And that's why I want to kind of go at, because look, I understand we haven't seen a lot of Will Levis. I understand that. But is it fair to put him in that category as a Desmond Ridder, as a Zach Wilson, a guy to where it's like, you're definitely not the future of this team?
Well, no, we can't know, because I think Will Levis is the future of that team.
Okay.
Let me first of all, let me say this. I got to give Will Levis some credit because he's made some big boy throws. He's made some good decisions at times this year. And this is for an offense with Pep Hamilton as their offensive coordinator, something like that. So like we know how bad an offense led by Pep Hamilton can be. I think Will Levis is going to be this team's franchise quarterback. I don't think he's been in the league long enough to say he's a Zach Wilson. He's a Desmond Ridder. Desmond Ridder's only been in the league for 2 years, and he's bad.
Yeah.
He's a Derek Carr who's bad. I'm praying for your Saints. He's bad.
No, don't. Well, look, that's another conversation for another day. But I'm sorry to cut you off.
But I want to say that for Levis, he's not in that class. He's in the class of a guy you can get turnovers off of him. That's the type of class he's in right now.
That is true.
He's going to try you. And when he try you, there's 50-50 chance you can get some turnovers. So, but I don't think he's not the CJ Stroud of the draft class, because that guy's in Houston. He's just not playing Sunday. You can get some turnovers on Levis. You can make him make some bad mistakes. And when you do that, you got to capitalize. But it's definitely containing Will Levis.
We have seen this defense throughout the season do a solid job on Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray, Joe Burrow. Like, we've seen them do a solid job. But the other quarterbacks that we just mentioned, majority of those other quarterbacks, like the Zach Wilsons, like the Desmond Ridder, those guys ended up having either close to or a career day against the Houston Texans defense. This question was asked by our good friend DJ Bieniemy of ESPN. He asked defensive coordinator Matt Burke, is there an issue in terms of this defense getting up for certain quarterbacks and kind of overlooking other potential quarterbacks?
Yeah, I don't know if I would specify. I don't think we're doing anything different versus certain guys. I mean, each game plan is different. I don't think it's specific to like the experience of the quarterback or how they're valued. I mean, we respect all these guys that we're playing. So I think if there was one common thread of like this is the issue, like obviously we'd be able to tamp it down a little bit more. So I think again, we're just trying to really, really focus on not worrying about that, who we're playing, how they're playing. It's like, let's play our things right, and I don't really care about what the offense is doing. You know what I mean? It won't matter if we're in our spots. If we're not in our spots, then anyone can throw the ball. I could probably go out there and throw for a bunch of yards like that. So I think it's, again, just really focusing back on us and what we're trying to do.
Thank you guys for listening to today's episode. I promise to be better next week. Under the weather, but make sure that you subscribe, like, and comment to the Lockon Texans podcast on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Follow me on X/Twitter at John_Hickman12.
And as always, I'm your host, Cody M. Davis. Please remember to follow me on Twitter at CodyDavis_24. Once again, that's Cody COTYDAVIS_24. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, peace.